Hello listeners everywhere. Welcome to the archive of audio antiquities, a voyage into the vault of wonders on the wireless. In a moment, Simon Exton and Ken Moss will be here to speak to you.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the archive of audio antiquities. I'm Ken Moss.
I'm Simon Exton.
This month we are listening to the BBC Radio 4 comedy series, Welcome to Our Village, Please Invade Carefully. This was a sitcom on BBC Radio 4. The pilot in the first series actually aired on Radio 2. It was written by Eddie Robson and produced by Ed Morrish. It concerns the invasion of the small Buckinghamshire village of Cresden Green by an alien race called the Geonin. The programme starred Hattie Morahan as Katrina Lyons, a 30-something professional from London who was visiting her parents at the time of the invasion, with Charles Edwards as Uliaban, the leader of the aliens in smooth-talking human form. Pilot episode featured Catherine Parkinson in the part of Katrina, whilst the pilot and first series featured Julian Rhine-Tutt as Uliaban. The pilot aired on the 5th of July 2012, and the first series aired the 7th to the 28th of March 2013. The second series on the 15th of October 2014.
Now, you should all have a copy of the agenda. Between item 9, repairs to the fence between the playground and Colney Drive, and item 10, any other business, could you please add item 9B, the recent invasion of the village by beings from another world?
Dad?
Yes, Katrina?
Why item 9B?
We can't put it after any other business because we always do any other business last. We can't do the other business, then have another piece of business.
Right, I thought the direction of my query was obvious, but apparently not. I meant, why aren't we discussing the alien invasion first?
Because minutes of the previous meeting come first.
Well, Dr. Exton, this is a suggestion of yours, and I'd never heard of it until a few years ago when the CDs landed on my door. What do we think?
Well, I liked it enough to recommend it to you. It's an entertaining radio sitcom, and as an audio podcast, we quite like those.
They help.
Fun scripts. I think it loses its way in the second series, but we'll come on to that. A really good cast. Again, the fact that it's a changing cast doesn't do it favours in the second season, but again, we'll come on to that. The premise is quite fun and Doctor Who-ish, the whole energy barrier demons thing. The writer obviously has a little bit to do with Doctor Who fanfic.
You're on ultra thin ice, Dr. Exton.
No, I'm bloody not. Big Finish is fanfic. It might be good fanfic, but it's fanfic. And in this, one of the episodes is called Counterplot. Uliaban has minions called Yartek, Varga and Gravis, and at one point he asks for an etheric beam locator. The I like Doctor Who vibes are really quite strong.
Well, the fact that Peter Davison's in it as Richard Lyons, the father of one of the principal characters. Yeah, there's more than a hint of the Who's about this running through it. It's actually in my notes about the etheric beam locator. That's in the very last episode. Unfortunately, it suffers from that comedy trope that it's of its time, and it's going to get more and more of its time as the years roll by. For example, the ship's computer started making suggestions based on what Uliaban was asking it to do in the style of the Microsoft Office paperclip. Now, that was very swiftly abandoned by Microsoft when they realised that it was irritating AF. But I'm wondering how many people now will get that joke.
Anybody who's watched Below Decks, and that's been out within the last couple of years, and it does a very similar thing.
Right.
I agree with you that there are a lot of dated references. There will be in any contemporary programme you watch, and actually often quite a lot of dated references in any futuristic set programme that you watch, because contemporary references are what brings your audience familiarity. I think that there's an awful lot in this that is very appropriate to a modern audience, but I'll come on to that later. I really enjoy this. I think the interplay between both Katrina Lyons's and the first Uliaban, Julian Rhine-Tutt, is brilliant. Charles Edwards comes along in the second series as Uliaban. He does a fine job, and if you hadn't heard Julian Rhine-Tutt doing it beforehand, it would be great. But he's not the same. because the first Uliban is so good, it really sours the second series. Second series runs out of steam plot-wise. I think this was one of these that would have been fantastic had it just stuck to the initial 4 episodes. In the same way as Ectoplasm. Ectoplasm is 4 great episodes. The format was so rigid, it would have really struggled going beyond those 4. And I think this is much the same. The second series, there's some nice bits in it, but it's very samey.
I'd have to agree, because there's only so many situations that you can put aliens in within a closed system where cultural differences and looking at something as silly as a cricket match from an outside perspective, you can milk that dry. There's only so many situations where you can realistically wring half an hour of comedy out of it. I feel quite sorry for both the writer and producer, to be honest, because the changing cast is a big problem for me with anything. And in this, it does take you out of it. I really like Catherine Parkinson in the pilot. Hattie Morahan does a perfectly good job, but she's not Catherine Parkinson.
But the comparison between the 2 Katrina Lyons is much closer than the comparison between the 2 Ulibans.
Agreed. They are a very, very similar performance. And I don't know, it's down to the direction, I suppose, but unfortunately, I mean, Julian Rhind-Tutt, he's another one. He replaced Benedict Cumberbatch in the Radio Rumpoles, and it was no disrespect to him, but he wasn't Benedict Cumberbatch. So while you're getting perfectly competent actors into these roles, if they're replacing somebody established, they're already on an uphill struggle.
Yeah, it's like the fellow who stood in for Benedict Cumberbatch in that episode of Cabin Pressure. It makes it one of the weakest episodes because the change in actor, and particularly change in voice actor. If you're changing visuals, you can do things that minimize the amount of time that you see the face of the new actor full on until you're used to them. You can't really do anything to minimize the voice.
No, not really. And it must have been a blow to the production team, because they're not going to like it any more than we like it as listeners. So I do feel very sorry for them that for whatever reason, the cast did change. It breaks the continuity of any series, certainly not levelled uniquely at this. This is across the board, TV, radio or other.
We focused on the 2 lead characters, and an awful lot of the scenes are two-handers between Uliban and Katrina Lyons. And I was going to come on and talk about some of the supporting cast, because, I mean, there are 3 main supporting casts. There's Katrina's parents, who are played by Peter Davison and Jan Francis, who are both brilliant.
They are.
I mean, Peter Davison is brilliant in anything because he is a superb actor. The supporting cast on this were really good. I loved Katrina's mother. I thought she was a fantastic character and exactly the sort of touch the hyacinth bouquets.
Yeah, they were the archetypal middle-class home counties couple. He likes his cricket and things done in the proper way, and she's the barracking wife that she likes things done in her proper way as well, and is always pecking his head over something. And it was that sitcom married couple. Those 2, I thought, worked really well and bounced off each other perfectly. They were really good parts. The cricket match one is one of the very early ones, but that was a brilliant example of Peter Davison's character and what really mattered to him about being terribly English and the way cricket has to be played, even though he cheats all the way through to try and beat the aliens.
Using some rules or other to try and predict how the cricket match would end breaks Uliban's computer in a way that they've not been able to find any other complex logic puzzle that will do.
There are flashes of brilliance throughout this thing. I've got to say, it's not one of those series that I've been grabbed by in a pow sort of way, but it's very, very easy listening. It is amusing. It's nicely written, it's certainly nicely performed. I just think that the premise as a whole is just a little bit too weak. I agree with you, and again, I'd not thought of it in those terms. It would have been far better as a standalone 6-ep series. Yeah,
and, you know, there are TV sitcoms like that. No Heroics, absolutely brilliant, but couldn't have stood a second series.
I suspect 99% of our listeners have never heard of No Heroics, and it's such a bloody brilliant series. I think that would have had the potential to run. But again, it's all down to the scenarios that you can engineer with a premise.
Yeah, and the tighter your premise, the fewer the scenarios.
But considering that this is supposed to be an entire village and the number of supporting cast in this, even down to extras and what have you, it's tiny, all things compared, and yet it still paints this nice picture. It feels bigger than
there's a fifth regular who is Katrina's comrade in the Creston Green resistance.
Is it not Sister Lucy?
No, do you not remember that there's the whole thing about Lucy's dad being the terror of the village, and because the bloke who owns the pub gives her an Archers and lemonade because she does something for him, he burns the pub down?
Yes, you're quite right.
You never actually hear him as a character because she's always asking for booze, and Katrina is being all terribly brave and we must face up to this, and so, oh, can I have a drink? No, I'll face up to the alien, but I'm not going to face up to your father.
I did quite like the fact that in one of the episodes, the computer tries to recreate the perfect English pub.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Creston Green's new pub, which, after extensive research, I have decided to call The Lovely Pub. It's got everything you expect from a pub. It's got a room. It's got tables and chairs, and it serves alcoholic drinks and comestibles with a medically inadvisable sodium content. So, on with the merriment. Yeah.
Thanks for trying, but it's just not the same.
No, wait. Why don't they like my pub?
You work it out.
I shall. The superior intelligence of the Geonin will master this earth thing you call pub.
That I did find very amusing.
That particular episode kind of reminded me of, Time Gentleman, Please.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And the episode where, is it a pub quiz where they get people from the best pub in the area, which is the Queen of Hearts, and he's going on about all the perfect things that they have and how they've got a grill and a carvery and all that. That just reminded me of the list of things that Ulyaban put into his perfect pub, and nobody wanted to go there because it wasn't the Rose and Crown, is it?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
It's just not the same.
It's exactly the same.
Even when it's exactly the same. And before that, they give it the most convoluted name possible.
Welcome to the Saracen's Red Marquise of Mutton Arms Tavern. And Grill.
Yeah, it's good, but it's just not the same.
No, I know. No, it's much, much better.
Nah.
No, I demand that you come back and enjoy yourselves.
Try threatening them at gunpoint.
What are you doing here?
Watching you fail.
Yeah, there's some nice little bits of writing in this. I've got to say, as a whole, nice though it was, I wasn't overly blown away.
Yeah, it's not a brilliance I must listen in the same way that Ectoplasm is, but it's put it on and you're entertained for half an hour. And actually, what more do you want? It's nice to have the brilliance, but it's also nice to be entertained.
Oh, yes, it's certainly entertaining. It's not like you're going to be reaching for the off switch when you're listening to this. But if you're a Doctor Who fan, it'll be a case of spot the Who reference. There's something
spot the Who reference in season 2. I didn't notice any in season 1, but as soon as you get to season 2, the first episode is called Counterplot. That's when you get minions called Yartek. That's when you get your etheric beam locator. So it's almost as though he sort of held himself back in the first season. No. Mustn't put in references, mustn't put in Who references. And then, woohoo, we've got another season, and realistically, unlikely to get another one. I'm going to let fly. And I was kind of surprised that there was only one episode title that was a Who, rather than all 5 of them or 6 of them, or however many there were in the second season. 5, I think, weren't there?
Mm.
My final thought, and when you were saying earlier that it was very much of its time, I actually think this has an awful lot to offer to a modern audience as an analogy for our time. Because what you've got is a charming, charismatic and fairly brainless front man with a cabal of utterly brainless minions acting as a front for external forces to isolate a community. And it's all supported by old middle-class status quo working to basically isolate and diminish their own lives. Does that remind you of anything?
I feel like we should be playing Deutschland über alles at this point. We'll park
Tomorrow
that
belongs
there.
to me.
Let's rate this in earworms.
This is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends.
Dr. Exton, how many are you giving this out of 10?
Well, I was going to give it 7 because it's kind of entertaining, but seeing as you've just finally seen the light and admitted that Brexit has an association with Nazi Germany, well done you. Knew you'd see the light eventually. I'm going to bump it up to an 8.
Well, I've not seen the light, with air quotes. I'm going to give
It's not like your time will come.
I'm going to give this a 5. It's very middle of the road for me. I did enjoy it. It's perfectly listenable. In fact, a 5 is a bit unfair. I'll give it a 6. It's a nice premise. I just think it's stretched slightly longer than it's really got the legs to do. It is well written. It's certainly well performed. The changing cast does knock it down for me, I'll be honest. That is a big part of why I didn't enjoy this quite as much as it probably deserves to be enjoyed, if I'm honest. But no, a perfectly entertaining little listen, and 2 series of well-produced Radio 4 sitcom.
So if you were only rating the first series, how would you rate it?
Probably give it a 7. Yeah. Like I say, what drags it down is stretching slightly further, but it's certainly not the only series that suffered from that.
Yeah, I agree. I have to say, this is no disrespect to Charles Edwards as an actor. I've seen him in other things. He was Michael Palin in that Monty Python biopic and did a really good job. I've seen him in Waking the Dead. Apparently he's been in The Crown and Downton Abbey, but since I don't watch those, then that's a bit academic for me. He did a perfectly good job, and if it wasn't that he was replacing somebody who had really made the part his own and somebody who's a very individual actor anyway, I mean, nobody but Julian Rhind-Tutt sounds like Julian Rhind-Tutt.
That's true.
So he was kind of dealt a losing hand to start with. It's no disrespect to him, but it does diminish the program. It's the Matrix effect. You can do something that is great. The more you try and drag out a base premise, the more you lose it.
And they'll continue singing it forever just because.
To round us off, what have you got to recommend we listen to?
It's something called Uncensored.
I'm Harriet Langley Swindon, and this is Non-Censored.
It's fronted by the comedian Rosie Holt. Don't know if you know her.
I do, yeah.
Does fantastic parodies of people like Nadine Dorries. This is her parody of a very right-wing radio show fronted by a posh, brainless woman with a double-barreled name who's very litigious, so I'm not going to...
Risk getting us cancelled by naming her.
Exactly. It's basically a piss take of that radio show. It is absolutely hilarious. You would love this. You would absolutely love this. I think I may have recommended this to you, so it's possible you'll have heard some, but I doubt it.
You doubt correctly, because, yes, time is at a premium. But I know the general style of radio show that it's driving at there, and I think that the idea and the premise behind them is good and had lots of potential, but unfortunately the way they are usually delivered ends up being a bit ranty and shouty and... oh dear, this could have been so much better. So yeah, I think that is definitely worth having a go. It's
always sold as we want a free and open debate, and then they have anything but. So yeah, give Uncensored a go. It's not laugh out loud funny, but it is that kind of political satire that you're giggling about a couple of days later. There are laugh out loud bits to it, but it's generally a slow burn, but I think you'll find it worth it.
And on that note, boys and girls, I'm going to sign us off. Next month, we are coming back with the first series of the BBC Radio 4 version of Count Arthur Strong. You've recommended this, Dr. Exton. I wonder why.
Spoiler, oh dear.
I'll park that there as well. Thank you very much for listening to us again, boys and girls. Write in, we're on the socials. Do let us know if you've got any recommendations that you want us to listen to. We'll certainly give them a whirl. But until next month, thank you for listening. We'll be back soon.
Bye now.
The archive of audio antiquities featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss, and the announcer was Jenny at Blue Box 99. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was by Edward White, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.